If you're attending Sunday Mass, that's wonderful. The next question is, once there, are you going through the motions or truly partaking in the liturgy? The Mass is a timeless prayer that has been prayed in similar fashion since the early church. Thousands of years of beautiful ritual seeped in profound symbolism, each attended by Christ personally. Mass prepares us for the spiritual battle of our daily lives. For Catholics, the truth, beauty, and goodness of the Mass is a charging station for the soul, an intimate moment with Christ, a reminder that we are more than physical. We are spiritual beings, souls in need of nourishment. The Mass is created for believers to participate in Christ's sacrifice and to remember that we are meant for eternity. It is beautifully crafted, intelligently designed, derived from God's wisdom through the ages. Sacred music is a large part of the experience and wayfinding to God in His divine setting and a most intentional event. Those who prepare the Mass know a lot about its structure, including the hows and whys. For many cradle Catholics, life and time had faded what knowledge we once had of the specifics and the structure, even the higher purpose of the sacrament. Muscle memory is better than no memory, but it's important to recognize that every single element of the liturgy of the Mass has meaning and purpose, especially the music. Today we talk with someone who knows this structure and purpose by heart, Rexphil Rallanka, Director of Music at the Cathedral for the Blessed Sacrament in Sacramento, California. He sang with Notre Dame, liturgical and basilica choir, and has performed across the country and around the world, including at the Catholic cathedrals of Oakland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Columbus. Rex is certainly qualified to help us connect the dots of reason and melody as applied to sacred music. Rex, it is great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Rex, I've only skimmed the surface of an amazing career. Please help us fill in the blanks.
Well, I'm a cradle Catholic, and I went to Catholic school my entire life. I born and raised here in Sacramento. I went to Holy Spirit School. We attended St. Anthony Parish over in the Pocket area. I was a student in high school at Jesuit High School, which is where also I teach choir. And then I went to the University of Notre Dame. I did 2 degrees there. I got my bachelor's in math with a second major in piano performance. And then I went back to Notre Dame for a master's in organ performance. Since Notre Dame, I did a year of service. I did it through the Dominican Volunteers program, where I volunteered in Chicago at a program that provided services to people with AIDS, and also lived in community with Dominican sisters. After that, around 2003 to 2005, I got my first full-time job in church music. I was the director of music for St. Robert of Newminster in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where we had a very comprehensive and large music program. But thankfully, my heart was in California. I wanted to come home to California. Around 2005, I was notified by the director of music at the Cathedral at the time that they were reopening the Cathedral after a $35 million restoration, and he wanted me to apply as their principal organist. So I did, and they accepted me, obviously, and I was principal organist from 2005 to 2007, and at around November of 2007, I was named director of music for the Cathedral. And since then, I've become the choir teacher right here at Jesuit High School.
So it sounds like you were born to be involved in sacred music. Where do you think you arrived at that final decision?
So the University of Notre Dame was very formative for me. Before I went there, I knew about parish music. It didn't really grab me. If anything about the liturgy grabbed me, it was more just the holiness and sacredness of the Mass. And it wasn't until I went to Notre Dame and I attended I believe it's the 10 a.m. Mass with the Notre Dame liturgical choir, that I realized how gorgeous music can be, and also how glorious the pipe organ was. I was a piano major, but I didn't think of the organ as a serious instrument until I actually heard it at Mass. And in particular, I remember when I was a junior at Notre Dame. That's how long it took. It took me to until my junior year at Notre Dame that I realized, wow, the organ is such a profound instrument. It was my first year in the choir, and for the Feast of Christ the King, the organist for the postlude of Christ the King, he played Vidor's Toccata, and I was just mesmerized. And the very next semester, I took my first organ lessons, and I've been an organist ever since.
Tell us about the music program at the Cathedral. What makes it different than other programs, and what does this mean to the Mass?
So it's probably very similar to many other cathedrals in the United States in that we have the primary cathedral choir. Our cathedral choir sings at the 10 a.m. Mass, and we have a corps of paid section leaders. We sing a typical season from September through Corpus Christi. The other two masses are just me as the organist and a paid cantor. We utilize traditional hymnody at all of the services. That is the primary body of liturgical music that we use for congregational singing. Everything is accompanied by the organ at the English masses. We also do have two Spanish masses, and I'm proud to say that at one of the Spanish masses, the primary one, which occurs at noon, the instrument that they use is the organ, which I don't think is very common for Spanish masses across the country. So I'm very happy that we do have an organist that can play and can provide music for our Spanish-speaking community.
To those of a certain age, the organ was at one time an integral part of Mass, no matter where you attended. Today, it's not so prevalent. What is the role of the organ in liturgy? And for those churches who have replaced the organ, what are they missing?
So the organ is the only instrument that is associated with holiness and sacred. It's truly intertwined with the church. But firstly, the most important instrument is the human voice, because that is the instrument that was made by God himself. So it's the most perfect instrument. And really, you could do liturgy with only the human voice. But what does the organ add? Well, firstly, the organ is the instrument that has the widest range. It has the lowest notes. It has the highest notes. It also has probably the widest dynamic. It can be as soft as the softest instrument, or it could be as loud as a full symphony orchestra. So historically, the organ was viewed as kind of like the voice of God. I mean, because of that grandeur. And if you think about it, when you go to Europe, where organ and all this sacred music blossomed, you think about the churches that they were in. They're not like a lot of our churches today. The churches that the organ grew up in were these beautiful, acoustically beautiful, reverberant spaces. So when that organ tone sounds, it's traveling within that church for about 4 to 8 seconds, and you just get enveloped with sound. I mean, you're just it's just an awesome experience when you're in, especially like Paris, where they've crafted a very very rich organ tradition. So yeah, for those of us who've experienced it, I mean, we just know the power of the organ and that it cannot be replicated. I mean, even a symphony orchestra can't do it. I mean, you have 40 players, whereas one person controlling all that sound. It's just amazing. So what is the role of the organ? The role of the organ primarily is to accompany singing. That is in the Vatican II documents, and I believe it's probably in older church documents on sacred music. So historically, it was used to accompany the choir. Today, it's used to accompany both choir and congregational singing. Also important in the liturgy is the use of the organ for meditation. Because of the size of the instrument, the sounds that you can get out of it, it really is conducive to bringing us closer to the divine in our prayer through liturgy. So there are times throughout the Mass where it's appropriate to just have the organ play by itself. So you have preludes before the Mass. So those tend to be a little more meditative to prepare us for the liturgy. You have postludes or recessional instrumental music at the end. Those tend to be grand to send us forth to spread the message of the Lord. And then throughout the liturgy, in the middle of it, there are times where we can just sit in silent contemplation with that organ music, hopefully beautiful, meditative, that helps lend itself to bring us into a deeper state of prayer throughout the Mass. So there are times like where we have just cover the action on the organ, like if a procession is going a little too long, maybe the song for communion wasn't long enough, so we need to cover a little of that with organ music, and also at the offertory.
So with all of its impact, why are organs disappearing in Catholic churches?
So before Vatican II, the instruments that were allowed in church were voice and organ. And with the Vatican II, when you look at the documents, they did start allowing other instruments. And probably the most common one you'll see in a Catholic church in the United States is the piano. And one of the reasons I believe that we see more piano than organ in churches right now is that most Catholics don't hear the organ played very well. When I was growing up, I attended 2 parishes that they did use the organ at every Sunday. But as a kid, I never thought, wow, I want to play that. I wanted to play the piano, and I think perhaps there's lack of teachers of the organ. There's also, because of lack of people not hearing good quality organ at church, people aren't drawn to the fact that the organ can be so spectacular. And kids are drawn, I believe, to things that make them want to be better, right? So if they see, like when I was at Notre Dame, it took me until I was a junior. When I saw that Vito Toccata, I said, man, I want to play that. I don't think a lot of people in the pews are experiencing that with the organ. And then there's the cost of the organ. Unfortunately, pipe organs are very expensive. I mean, you're looking at for a very, very high quality, large pipe organ, for like a space for like any large cathedral, you're looking at almost $4 million. So that's a significant financial undertaking for any church. But if a church does choose to do that, that really shows that they are committed to quality music.
It does seem high barrier, but how does sacred music help Catholics navigate the world, which is the point?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, music is expression. It's human expression. I'm biased. I'm a musician. I look at music as the highest form of our emotions and human expression. And with sacred music is a very high expression of our faith. For those of us who do sacred music, singers, instrumentalists, I would say most of us probably think of music as very integral to our faith life. And those who do sacred music, and this also includes the people in the pews who sing on a regular basis, who actually participate, as Vatican documents would say, with full active and participation in the liturgy. I think we are all edified by sacred music, primarily because when we do that action together, when we do express ourselves through music and do that communally, those who are engaging in it in a deep way are enriched together as a Christian family and in our faith in God.
So how do we get more people to train as liturgical musicians?
So I personally have trained three organists who have gone on to be serious organists. So I think the first thing to do is search out the youth, and the most natural people to look for are pianists. So maybe a piano student in your church, invite them over to the organ, invite them to play the organ. One thing I like to do is if there's a young kid who comes up to me after Mass and watches me play the postlude, I invite them to watch me every Sunday. Come watch what I do. And I even have a really serious 10-year-old right now who actually sits next to me the entire Mass every Sunday at the 10 a.m. Mass. And I got that idea from one of my students who from very young wanted to play the organ, but at his church, he didn't come to the cathedral. At his church, his organist said, "You need to take piano first, but here's what I'll do. You can watch me play every Sunday, and you can turn my pages and pull my organ stops." And that kid today, he attended and finished a bachelor's in organ at the Eastman School of Music, and he is currently in seminary to be a priest. Getting the youth involved really early and then allowing them to enter your musical space.
That's a very inspiring and actionable story. Well, thanks for joining us, Rex.
My pleasure.
It would seem that we're experiencing the unintended consequences of wrong turns. Getting back the proper focus begins with knowledge. Thank you for sharing your insights.
Thank you for having me.
In a world of chaos, noise, and constant battle for power, how can you really know truth? Here's one way. Truth never changes. It doesn't require software updates or modernization or likes. It's like math or physics or sacred music, intelligently designed, single purpose to draw us closer to the one true God through his ancient teachings and principles. All that remains is free will. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed our show. I'm Linda Hoffman. See you on our next exciting episode of Fear Not.
This has been a ChantWorks production. Please visit us online at chantworks.com.